Now it's November, and obviously November is the month where dreams are made when it comes to whitetails. It is the pinnacle of whitetail hunting all season long. But that doesn't really matter. There's still work to be done. Now there's those of you out there that you just want to go to the woods, enjoy the hunt, sit down, enjoy fall splendor, and maybe shoot a buck. And there's nothing wrong with that. And then there's others that want to work all year long. And for those people, there's something to do in the whitetail woods every single month, and November is no exception. There's still work to be done, and that's a good thing. Every month I've been going through habitat and hunting chores. In November, I'm going to go over a few. Now, obviously, it's kind of like the pressure on your land. The amount of pressure on your land should be the least in November, not the most. You want to give the deer the sense that your land is the most pressure-free, least risky, most remote, reclusive land that there is in the entire neighborhood, even if it's just 30 or 40 acres or you're hunting on public land. You don't want to push that. Least amount of pressure in November, least amount of work to do in November, because this is the culmination of all that work that you've been planning and achieving all year, but there's still things to be done. And you can see right here, I don't know if you remember at the beginning of the summer, when we bought this place June 5th, we had a pile of family tradition stands here that we'd moved from other places, a couple new ones. We've had some ladder stands. We put a ladder stand together just about 3 or 4 weeks ago and put it out. But you can see right now, our stands have been replaced by big giant morel target. We have a broadhead target, and I've been shooting between the boat and some of our construction stuff over here. And again, it goes to your shooting, especially, we're all shooting in usually July, August, September, October to build up. But when it gets in November, don't stop practicing. You want to feel extremely confident when the moment of the truth arrives. And you don't want to feel like, man, I haven't shot for 2 weeks or a week. You got to keep practicing, even if it's just 5 or 10 arrows a day. That first arrow you shoot is the most important all the time. I've even heard some people saying, well, just shoot 1 arrow for practice. No, I'm not saying that. That's not going to build muscle memory, retention. It's not going to build any kind of build up to actually build your muscles up and your mind to give you that confidence to shoot. First arrow matters, and then I like shooting a lot of other arrows just to make sure I'm still in form and shooting well. So that's this. This is where all those stands have been, and they're taken out. And I'll show you just briefly. This is part of what my November is. We were supposed to be done with this and moved a while ago, but we were able to close on our home in Coon Valley. We're not even officially Minnesota residents yet. Still, resident tag in Wisconsin, non-resident Minnesota, driver's license in Wisconsin. That's where our mail goes right now for the most part. But this is our stuff that's going into our house. Bikes and everything. Of course, you can see the priority right here. This is the priority for our whitetail wall. And I don't know if this would be exactly Diane's priority, but I can't wait to get these guys all on one wall. We have a big room, a big wall that we'll be able to put these on. So there's a lot of work that I have to do just getting this stuff ready over November, and that's part of it. This is interesting. This is a whiteboard that we had in Coon Valley downstairs. We have a new whitetail room here. It's a hunting room, and this will be on the end of it. Hopefully have some good lighting in there, and it'll be soundproof. So we'll have a good spot to stick this, but that's coming in the next couple weeks, 3 weeks or so when it's all done. I left my portable whiteboard down in Kentucky. So that's the only bad thing, is that one that we can move around and pretty easy to do so. This bigger one will take a better spot to put it, but that has to go up here. Now, tree stands. There's still time for a little tree stand work. And there's always that last minute tree stand you can throw up, but boy, you really have to be careful. I'm not throwing stands up in bedding areas right now. I'm not throwing stands up real invasively and making a lot of commotion on a food source where I'm cutting down trees and limbs. Deer notice that. They pick up on it. They pick up on fresh cut limbs on the ground. And so even if I do cut those in a non-invasive area, I'm still dragging those limbs off to the side. So make sure that if you are putting a last minute tree stand, we have one of those potential locations we're actually going to scout out right now. And I might move a tree stand in that location, but it's got to be, we got to get a stand out from another area, move it over, and then put it back in this area. And I can only be in this location because it's not right smack dab in a bedding area. It's not a food source. It's in a long cruising line transition where I feel we can, if we have the right tree and we can see that, then we can put a last minute tree stand in. Talk about mock scrapes. Mock scrapes, there's always something you can do. I'm not putting mock scrapes in real invasive areas right now. And just because I don't want the disturbance of going in there, leaving any kind of scent around. It seems like the deer use them within a day, 2 days, even mature bucks. But I'm very worried about this time of year, especially when I'm adding a camera to that location. But there's a lot of times where we're getting vines broken this time of year. Most of the time I don't have the time to go fix it. But a good fix is just get a hose clamp and get a new piece of vine, go out there, attach it to the old piece. You know, you're not putting that hose clamp down in deer face. It's, you know, up above right here. We have one that Dylan told me, I think Dylan, is that broke probably 7 feet in the air, 8 feet in the air. Yeah. So it's a regular, he hunted with Diane the other day in that location, had a pretty cool hunt. And there's bucks moving through that scrape area, but there's no more scrape. Somehow they broke it. A lot of times they pull it down, it snaps, it probably went flying up in the air. And this was one that was 1.25 inches. I thought it was break proof, you know, that it wasn't going to actually break. But there is a little bit of mock scrape that you can do. Get a vine in there, attach it some way, even if you're using parachute cord, just extend it to the piece that's already broken, bring it down. Because in some cases, if it's 6 feet off the ground, they might utilize it, stand on their back legs. We have footage of that. But in a lot of cases, if it's 7, 8 feet high, they're just not gonna pay attention to it. And you can see the bucks just walking under that right now, even if they're paying attention to the scrape itself. One of the things I really like to do, and this is a lot different because in the past, if we put a traditional trail camera out, non-cellular cam, you know, we're putting it out and then we have to go in there again, even if we hunt it, to actually get the SD card. And it's just too invasive to me to put it out there, to bring it back. And so this is a perfect opportunity to get one of those cell cameras that you have. We have a Exodus Render, and I'm gonna be non-invasive enough that I wanna put this in that area where I'm considering putting a tree stand. I'll put this in there first. I have a non-invasive access where I'm just going through goldenrod. It's a steep bank. I can get down there. We might put this camera 10 yards into the woods, 15 yards at the most. Probably go through a thick area, put it on a good trail system, maybe a scrape, where it's hidden, 6 feet off the ground, a tree wider than the camera, really important, and then maybe another trunk or brush to the side so the profile is hidden. And this is a low glow, blackout. The deer can't see it when it's taking a picture. So it'll be about that far off the ground. A lot of times we angle it down and we're gonna put it on some activity that's there right now. And if we hide it well, we hide our access in and out, this will tell us a lot of intel in a corner of the property that I haven't been to. Actually, I have to admit, I haven't even walked into that area, unfortunately. I have a stand on one side about 200 yards away, 150 yards, and I have 2 stands on the other side about 200 yards away. And this is the back side of a potential bedding area that's down below. And I wanna see if bucks are cruising that area and not going to those other stand locations, or at least this will tell me what's going on in that whole line of movement, even between those stands, this stand, and then that middle portion right there that I think could actually be a better location. So last minute trail camera, last minute tree stands. It's all about being non-invasive. There's opportunity to continue your shooting. And really, once you have the trail cameras in place and you have your whole trail system, this is really a time, and Dylan brought this up when we were talking about this video, that you know, really a time to pay attention to your trail cameras and the intel that you're receiving from them. And what I find very interesting is a lot of the pictures I'm getting right now, yeah, they help for the current season. They help make decisions on stand locations, which ones are more active than others. But boy, this is really helping give me intel for next year and the following year for bucks that I might only get 6, 7, 8 pictures of a year, but they tell me the timing of when they're on the property. I can determine when, you can determine where they're coming from and why, what corners of the property they're hitting your property during the daylight, and what kind of weather they're moving onto the property, if it's peak rut, pre-rut. It's amazing how I'll look back and we'll use pictures from 2, 3 years prior to determine what buck we're shooting, a 5, 6, 7-year-old buck, or which one we're going after. And it was all based on years past. Think about that a bit going forward. There might be some details or some card pulls that you disregard and you forget about that 2-year-old buck or a smaller 1.5-year-old buck that had an odd point on it that could have given you a little bit of intel going forward. And what's kind of interesting, you'll notice as these bucks age, the younger bucks, you'll find if you're keeping notes in your head or on paper, that the range is a lot wider and it's hard to pin them down, especially if you have 3, 4, 5-year-old bucks or 5, 6-year-old bucks, 7-year-old bucks. You'll find the older they become, the more defined they are in their patterns. The more defined they are in their patterns, the more killable they become. The problem is they're a lot more wary of hunting pressure. Not only can a trail camera tell you where they're at and what kind of sign they're leaving around for the future, but really analyze strictly and really be critical of when you're on the land, What are the trail cameras showing you the next day, 2 days, 3 days? These cameras right now, especially in the heart of the season, whether it was October or November, the intel that you can study, and that's part of your chores for November, is to be very critical of your access on your land, your access to your tree stands, and the negative impact that your access has on your current hunts and your future hunts. And that'll give you intel for years to come, no different than trying to narrow down the habits of a big giant buck. November, still a time for work to be done, still a time to get some habitat chores done and some hunting chores done in the woods. And boy, once we get in December, it's really starting to amp up, especially into January as we get into bedding areas and timber cuttings. But those are for the next month. And that's where if you're keeping up with these and you're getting work done each month, then by the time it rolls around to next year, you'll be well ahead of the game for making sure that you connect and find success, not only this fall, next fall, but every fall to come. Well, if you made it to the end of this video, you're obviously interested in whitetail habitat solutions, what I have to teach, and you will love my new web class series. The first one is how to design your whitetail property. It's out now. The link is in the description. I invite you to check it out. It's on my website. Can't wait to hear about it.